So what we have here is a Western Electric 2554 telephone that I finally got around to unscrewing the keypad from. I've had it disassembled partially for a couple weeks now, but basically what happened is the ringer has not been working, and so I partially took it apart to see what was going on with the network, and then I took it even more apart to get at some of the other stuff. But the way I have it connected is, since this is a completely hardwired phone, it's not even quarter modular or anything, and the line cord is not very long at all, and I don't have any spare connection blocks or spade lugs or anything right now, so sort of just a quick and dirty solution. I just hooked mini grabber leads onto the corresponding wires, and in this case I happen to have the right colors for each of those, and then I've got those hooked onto this lineman's test set connector block thing, which I have for my lineman's test set, but it also lets you hook on, I mean, it's not intended for this, of course, but I can just hook on these mini grabber leads as if this were a lineman's test set as well. So I'm sort of piggybacking off of that, and I've got it wired in, and of course the phone itself works fine. We got dial tone, and everything works fine except the ringer, so I can go ahead and make a call. So yeah, that's that. So the phone itself works except no ringer, so if I go ahead and I I'll call it from this phone here. So you can hear that it's ringing, or you can hear the ringback tone, the audible ring, but you don't hear the actual gong ringer. But if I pick up, then the call is connected. So this would be useful like this if you wanted a no-ring phone, like many courtesy phones are. The incoming calls are allowed, but the ringer is shut off because they don't want people calling into those phones and people picking up, so that sort of discourages that kind of usage. So this would be handy for that, and I don't really mind it because if I have one phone that doesn't ring at all, it's not like it's a big deal. I've got, you know, more than a couple phones hanging around, so it's not a huge issue, but it is my only wall phone at the moment, and I'm kind of interested to hear what it sounds like when it does ring, especially since this is a single gong ringer as opposed to the double gong ringers that your standard desk phone, whether rotary or touch tone, will have. So that's kind of my goal here. I might even end up disabling the ringer again, but I'm interested to figure out at least what it sounds like. And so, to that end, this is sort of a puzzle that I've taken it upon myself to solve. And at this point, just so I don't do something stupid, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the line cord from this block just so I can make this dead. So now if of course I can hang this up. So now this is dead, so I can work on it a little bit more safely. I've already unscrewed pretty much everything here. I think this is the terminal strip or whatever. I've unscrewed that. I've unscrewed the keypad. I've, of course, unscrewed the cover. That was the first step, which basically you just, these screws here, you basically pry the number card out if it has one, and then you just unscrew these, and it comes right out. It's a little bit different since typically I'm used to unscrewing desk phones. So it's like, wait a minute, well this is different, but yeah, that's how you do that. And then inside the phone, or I guess for the phone itself, what we've got is a 2554B. I don't think that is focused right, but it's a 2554B from January 1973. And the network itself, I can't really read or find anything that says what it is on here. But looking at some of the BSPs, it appears to be a 4010D network. Here we've got a 35Y3A touchstone keypad from January 1973. I think pretty much everything in here is from 73. And these are the nice buttons that go all the way in. I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. But it's got the nice springy buttons where they're mechanical, and when you press the button in, they're actually levers or switches inside the phone that go in, and the button has a fair amount of travel. It goes all the way in, so it feels very natural to use. I really do like this type of keypad as opposed to, say, the 72 type dial, where if you press the button in, this is literally all that happens. The buttons don't have any travel at all, really, basically. And I mean, I almost can't stand these phones, or these touch-tone keypads. They're not super pleasant to use. So I'm very much partial to this type of keypad. Anyways, this is the keypad, and there's no issues with that, of course. And what I have noticed is that on the network, there are, well, let me, I guess, start with the ringer, because that is what the issue is here. So this ringer has 4 wires coming out of it. It's got, let's see, it's got the black wire, which goes here on the network. It's right under this thing. Can't really see it, but it's there, and that is L1 on the terminal. Then there's this red wire here, which I figured out was going here, which is the K terminal. And then it has these two guys, slate and slate red, which are disconnected and insulated as the documentation goes. And they were just tucked under here. I took them out, but I put it back in because I checked the wiring schematics for the 2554B, and I do want them disconnected and insulated. So that is not why they're not ringing. That is for basically party line ringing and other stuff like that. And so these connections are fine. And so usually what happens when I have a phone that doesn't ring is it's wired for party line service, or it's one of those ringer wires is disconnected. Well, that's not the issue here. Those wires all look good. So, oh, I also forgot to mention, the ringer itself it's a 63A. This is a P-type ringer on here. That is the dust cover covering the ringer itself. That's what they call it. It's a dust cover. I'm not sure what this white thing here is. I haven't seen that before, but I'm sure it's probably just some standard part, and I don't know what it is. But I'm not really concerned with that right now. Now, on the network itself, as you can see, it's kind of compact here. It's a little bit harder to see compared to a 2500 or a 500 sets network. But you can make it out pretty well. Let me just take the handset cord out here. And if I can get this to focus a little bit better. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but this terminal here is the A terminal, and there is nothing currently screwed into it. Now, in addition to these wires being disconnected and insulated, there's also this wire here which is disconnected and insulated, in this case with tape instead of plastic or whatever, but it gets the job done. And this wire it goes down through here and it goes into the hook switch assembly. And after looking at the wiring schematics for a while, I noticed that there are a couple ways it could be done, but one of them is basically that the A terminal needs to be connected to the K terminal, basically a series connection. And I think right now there is basically it's an open circuit because it's not connected to the hook switch. The ringer is disconnected from the hook switch. And from what I can make of the BSP, the slate wire is supposed to go to the E terminal. And so my issue, I think, is not that the ringer itself is disconnected. It's that the ringer is disconnected, or let me clarify that. It's not that the ringer is disconnected from the network or from the line. It's that the ringer is disconnected from the hook switch, which opens the circuit in a way that it's open, I guess, when the ringer is trying to ring. So that's why it might not be ringing. So that's what I think is the problem. I haven't tested it yet. But what I'm going to go ahead and do now is untape this and get all of this off. I can't really read what's on here. It has some numbers, and then I'm not sure what this is, like CO I3L. I don't know. I mean, if I knew what types of things here were common, maybe I would make that out, but I've got no clue. So, but I'm going to take that off and slip that onto the A terminal and see if that helps with anything. Okay, so I have gone ahead and managed to pry this off of there and tried to do as little damage as I could to the tape in the process. Just because, I don't know, I kind of want to keep that in there. Just because it's part of the history, you know, so. But I've taken the slate wire and screwed it into the A terminal and then screwed that back in again. So at this point, there should be a connection between the ringer, between the A terminal, which goes to the K terminal, which goes to the ringer, and to the hook switch through the slate wire. So I've connected it back up again, so if we go off hook, we get dial tone. This is a softer phone, or their transmit volume or the receive volume is a bit soft, but sometimes if you press a button, it'll get a little bit louder. Doesn't seem to be happening yet, but in any case, what we can try is going ahead and ringing the phone and seeing if we're going to get anything. So I'll do that now. And it's not ringing. Well, it is ringing, but this phone itself is not ringing. As before, I can pick up, and we're connected. Hello? So, from what I can tell, at least, connecting the slate wire has made no apparent difference. Or maybe it was relevant, but it's not the whole story. So at this point, I'm going to maybe try to see if I can get at the bias spring and see if that's in the wrong position. That really was my initial hope on what was wrong with this, because it made sense according to looking at the wiring diagram, and there's nothing else that's not connected currently that should be connected. So short of putting a new connection on here, I'm not sure what else there would be. Okay, so I've gone ahead now and flip the bias spring from whatever it was at before, low or high, to the opposite setting. And the way I've done that is if you just take a paper clip or a safety pin or whatever, and you rotate this cover so that you can get at the bias spring. You just take the spring, which you probably can't see, but it's that rod right there, and then there is this little barrier in the middle, and you can just flip it over onto one side or the other. So if we go ahead and try to give it a ring now, nope, still not ringing, so I guess it was not the bias spring either. Okay, so the next thing that I have noticed, or I guess that I will look into, is that you have the brown wire from the hook switch coming around here, and it's connected to this terminal here, and the other end of that terminal is connected to the black wire from the line switch, or sorry, not the line switch, from the line cord. Which means, because I don't have the black wire connected to anything, and that is indeed, according to the BSP at least, how this is supposed to be wired, black isn't connected to anything. So that would mean that brown from my hook switch, since that's connected to black from the line, is not connected to anything. So that's something to consider, is that this wire is dead right now. The other thing is that, according to the wiring schematic for this phone, brown from the hook switch should be wired to the C terminal, which is this guy in the corner here. And that seems to be the next possible step, at least for things to try, in trying to get this to ring. Because at that point, that would mean that I have slate wired to the A terminal, and then I have brown wired to the C terminal, which would mean that the hook switch is coming into both of these terminals here. And so that would effectively jump these two terminals, I guess, in a way. And so that's another thing that I've thought about, is in trying to get this to ring. Clearly the bias spring is not the issue, or at least the only issue, and clearly the slate wire is not the issue or the only issue. So it seems like a third thing to try here might be to move the brown wire from this terminal to the C terminal. And I'm not sure actually why it's terminated up here, if black is basically just a spare wire. I guess for other applications, or maybe the installer just terminated it here because that was a convenient place to terminate a wire that wasn't getting used. That strikes me as rather odd that he wouldn't just disconnect and insulate that at that point. But, you know, for other classes of service, maybe that was actually a useful wiring setup to have. So I'm going to go ahead and move the brown wire to the C terminal now and see where that takes me. Okay, so we're back, and I did try connecting brown from the hook switch to terminal C, and when I did that, the phone went dead. I picked up and there was no dial tone, and as soon as I removed the brown lead from terminal C, it started working again. So that's not quite right. Now, I did have a nice chat with somebody who knows a bit more about this wiring than I do, for sure. And what he suggested is that I should, well, first of all, this phone is wired for A lead control. So, an example of that would be like, I guess with tip ring, ringing for, if this was an extension off a key system or something like that. And it was modified so that it didn't ring when there was an incoming call, intended for outgoing calls only. And basically, to convert it back to how it should be wired according to the BSP, which I've been wondering about because there are a lot of discrepancies up here with the terminal strip, with having yellow from the line going to yellow from the hook switch. That is not what the VSP says it should be doing. So that answers a lot of questions, and that this phone's wiring has been modified. And to convert it back, what we will do basically is we will move the red wire from the line from terminal C to terminal 2 on the terminal strip, and we will disconnect the yellow wire from the hook switch. That will just be disconnected. So that's step 1. Step 2 is taking brown from the hook switch and connecting it to terminal C. Step 3, I currently have black from the ringer going to L1, which you can kind of see right in there. Black is terminating in L1, which is right there. And if you look at the wiring diagram, nothing is connected to either L1 or L2. So here's L2, nothing's connected to that, but I got black from the ringer going to L1. So we're going to disconnect black from L1, and we're going to connect that to terminal 1 on the terminal strip, along with green. So those 3 changes, well, I guess 4, I've already reconnected slate from the hook switch to terminal A. So I guess that was really step 1. And then there's 3 other steps to basically convert this back from A lead control to how a 2554B is typically wired with a 4010D network, which is what this is. So, and this orange-brown wire, or orange-black wire here, that goes to the touch-tone dial. So that will stay there. We'll basically swap red out for brown. We'll move black from the ringer up to terminal 1. We will disconnect yellow from the hook switch, and we will move this red wire here. And once we have done that, we'll give it another go and see if it works then. Okay, we're not quite done here yet. So far, I've only managed to get one of these screws out, and I think it was, let's see, yeah, it was this screw here, this little guy. I spent 40 minutes trying to get this little bugger out of L1. It was really stuck in there. And so I was trying real hard to get that out, and finally, thankfully, that came out, and I didn't break anything in the process. But yeah, so that means that L1 is finally out of that terminal. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this screw back in. Put this screw back in there, because we don't need anything terminating there. Alright, and here we are again, and I've gone ahead and replaced or removed all of those wires. Again, that L1 screw is really stuck in there. These ones up here weren't too bad. And I've screwed them in pretty tight, but not as tight as they probably were, just so life for future me will be easier. But again, what I've done is now the black wire that was previously at L1 is now at terminal 1. We've moved the red wire, the red line wire, from terminal C to terminal 2. I have disconnected the yellow wire that was at terminal 3 from the hook switch. The yellow one that's left is the line one, and that one I have, I guess as they would say, disconnected and insulated. And what the slate wire here was previously insulated in, and the slate wire is still connected here, and the brown wire from the hook switch is at terminal C now instead of the red wire that's now at terminal 2. So time to plug it in again and see what happens. Hopefully I don't blow anything up. And here's the receiver, and I'll go ahead and just plug this guy in here. and no dial tone. Just want to make sure that I don't have anything loose here. That looks good, I think. Yeah, that is there, and these seem to be good. So yeah, no dial tones. I think that there is something else that is not quite right here. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made a small change. And what I've done is I had two of these backwards. I disconnected the yellow from the hook switch and insulated that. And I should have disconnected the yellow from the line and insulated that. So that was my mistake. So I've gone ahead and flipped that around now. Now the yellow from the line is disconnected and insulated there, and the yellow from the hook switch is connected with red from the line. And if you think about that, it makes sense, because actually, if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense for yellow from the line to be connected to red from the line. That makes zero sense at all. So the yellow from the hook switch gives the red from the line a connection to the rest of the phone through the hook switch. So this actually makes perfect sense. Should have caught that before, my bad. So if I go ahead, the phone is dead right now because my green mini grabber lead has come unclipped. So I'm just going to put this back on the phone, back on the hook switch, just so I don't keep going on hook and off hook very quickly like that. But if I clip that on here now, so now we have that connected there, and we have it connected here as well. And if we go off hook, we got a dial tone. It's very soft, but we got dial tone, and I can dial. And okay, so I just called another phone. So this is working at least to the point that it was before. It's working at least as much as it was before I basically took everything apart and flipped all these wires around. So this is almost, this is back to basically what the wiring diagram in the BSP shows. So before it was wired for A lead control, and the ringer was disconnected that way, and now it is wired again as per the BSP. Just again, one last time, what we've done in this phone is we have black from the ringer, which is previously going to L1, we have it going to terminal 1. We have red, which was previously going to terminal C, going to terminal 2. We have disconnected the yellow from the line. We have reconnected slate from the hook switch to terminal A. And I think that's everything. There was something connected here. Oh yeah, that was the brown wire. So yeah, that's basically what we did in here. Those two are still there, obviously. Now I've got my nice loud dial tone. Usually when I pick up it's rather soft, but sometimes after pressing a button here, or just sometimes I guess in general, it ends up being louder. Now, here is the moment of truth. I haven't tried this yet, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to go ahead and call this from this phone here. So if we go ahead and give it a ring. And there we go. Ring nice and loud. That's actually quite loud. I was not expecting a single gong ringer to be quite that loud. But now it's all working, so there we go. That is an A lead control or a 2554B wired for A lead control, back to normal wiring. Now, one thing that might be worth trying at this point is flipping the bias spring back, because in the process of troubleshooting, that is one thing I tried, was flipping the bias spring. And if we stick this pin in here, that will allow us to flip it over. Now you can get a much better view of it, but it's this rod here, and basically all we got to do is take that and get it on the other side. So now you flip the bias spring. This is how it originally was. So we hang up now and give it a call. I imagine that it was in the loud position before, and it's only going to be softer now. I can't imagine it getting any louder than that. But let's go ahead and give it a ring. Okay, so I guess it's actually just as loud. I'll have to play with that and figure out the volume control on here, because you should be able to control the volume through a slider here, but if you take a look at this, you don't see anything. There isn't a lever or anything like there would be. So I might have to turn that down a little bit, just because that is a little bit too loud for my liking. But if you're looking for a nice loud wall phone, I mean, this is perfect. So, well, that's it for this 2554B conversion project. Now that it's ringing, I just have to figure out how to get it ringing at the volume I want. But the phone is properly wired now and all set to go.